Okay, well, we did take this trip, and when Diane asked me to do a presentation, I was kind of thinking, well, what can I say? This was just it was a fun vacation we took. But then, while on this trip, I was in a little fjord town in Norway. And I knew the Germans were in Norway in World War II. And I asked the gentleman as we were strolling through the town, how did it affect them? Were the Germans there? He says, oh, they were all over Norway. Well, they had 400,000 troops in Norway. His town was a town of 136 at the time of the war, were occupied for 5 years by the Germans. He says it was very brutal in a town in many ways. They would confiscate goods. They put forced labor in, no speech, no couldn't congregate as the community. So sometimes it kind of got me thinking, every place we went in Europe was affected differently by the war. So as we show the vacation slides and everything, we're going to talk about how each country was affected by World War II. And I want to start here just to show you, you look at this, this is the number of deaths, civilians and military, of the top 10 countries, and I had the 3 countries, Great Britain's in there, and then the 3 countries below. But you can see China, which a lot of people say, was China in World War II? Yeah, they were in World War II. Their war started in 1937 when the Japanese invaded them. It went all the way on, and there was tremendous atrocities all over the place. So you can see 80 million people were killed during World War II. So everybody has a story, and sometimes I think Europe was much more affected than us. In the United States, we lost 406,000 American troops, but they just have so many stories to tell. In fact, my 2 countries of heritage are Poland, and you can see they're on here. They only lost 240,000 troops. They were only at war basically for a month, but then 6 million civilians, and that was the purge of the Jews. My other country of heritage is Malta. Some people, well, where's Malta? Well, Malta's a little tiny island that was part of the British Empire just south of Sicily. Very strategic in the Mediterranean Sea. In fact, they hold the record of having the most consecutive days of being bombed by the Italians and the Germans, 154 consecutive days. Malta was bombed, day and night. Lost 50,000 people, became homeless. The country only had 230,000, that's 1/5 of the population. So you don't even hear all these stories, but every country has a story, and as we go through this, we'll share some highlights from the war and then some good things too and some fun things. So I got to start this up here. So this was our basic trip. We started in Copenhagen, took a cruise to Oslo, that fjord there, that little town is a town that we went to that I had that conversation with our guide. Went around Iceland. The very last stop in Iceland was a big disappointment to me because we couldn't get in there because of the seas. We had to tender in, and that was the Valley of the Waterfalls. Now, you shouldn't have to miss the pictures I didn't take. So I got some pictures there online to show you. And I'm sorry I didn't see it. And then we came down to Scotland after that and then back to Copenhagen. So it's good. So I got all excited when I saw this, our flight path. First off, we had them do our flight, and they sent us to San Francisco first from Detroit. So we had dinner in San Francisco, and then flew out of San Francisco. But I saw we're going to cut across Greenland. I said, I wonder what Greenland looks like, So I waited up because we're above the Arctic Circle here, so it was daylight most of the time. So we got there about 3:30 in the morning. I'm watching my flight tracker, and then I got my camera outside and took 2 shots of going over Greenland. And the first one's going to come up here. It's very mountainous when you hit the outside. And that's got about a mile thick ice cap all over Greenland. You can see how far the ice is up on the mountains. And then when you get inland, that's what you see. That's probably about 100 miles at 38,000 feet. Then we came to Denmark. And one of the key things about Denmark, you see Copenhagen. I'm going to put my little marker here I got. Copenhagen is right there. Very close to Sweden. And then I'm going to go on to the next slide and tell you some facts about Denmark. Okay, it's ranked amongst the happiest countries in the world. It has a biking culture. More than 50% of Copenhagen's population cycles to and from work every day. I wonder what the United States is. It must be like 1/millionth of a percent maybe that actually bike to work. Denmark is an archipelago with over 100 islands. Population 6 million. Area about the size of Maryland. Main religion is the Church of Denmark, which is Lutheran. And Denmark is the first country to allow same-sex marriage. Now here's how World War II affected Denmark before we go on to show the slides. Denmark declared neutrality on April 9th, 1940. In fact, almost everybody did, because that's after September 1st, 1939, when the Germans went to Poland and took over the country. And they were all there, and the Germans were very powerful. So they just said, well, we're neutral. We'll be neutral. The Danish government chose to cooperate to avoid severe repercussions. Most Danish institutions functioned normally until April 29, 1943, when the Danish government resigned in protest against German demands, leading to a direct military occupation. However, Denmark managed to protect most of their Jewish population by helping 7,200 of them escape to Sweden. A resistance movement did develop and engaged in various forms of sabotage against the German forces. On March 21st, 1945, the British attacked Copenhagen in an air raid aimed at the German Gestapo headquarters, as requested by the Danish resistance. Even though it succeeded, part of the raid mistakenly hit a nearby French school, resulting in the deaths of 87 students. The movie Bombardment is an historical drama that depicts the tragic human cost of war of that school. For most part, Copenhagen was spared any major destruction in World War II. Deaths amounted to 6,600. 500 were executed, 7,500 were resistance fighters, 1,072 were sailors, and 3,300 were civilians. So we'll go look at Denmark now. So we're just showing you some pictures around the city. We only had about, we got in the day before, but we had like 5 hours, so we walked around here for about 7 miles down the line. I'm just taking photos. I thought this was a church or something, but it was actually their city hall and was built to be their city hall. And this was the inside of the city hall. And then they turned this, looked like newsstand, into a little coffee shop. So bikes. I looked and I didn't see many locks on these bikes, and that was kind of curious. So I guess it's pretty secure. Now this is the Christiansborg Palace, and this is the seat of the government. They have their parliament there, the prime minister, and the Supreme Court. Now we got there about 20 to 5, and it was closing to 5, and it was a $40 ticket. So I said, we didn't make it, but I didn't want you to miss out on the pictures there. So I did. This is what it looks like on the inside. I got some of these off the internet. Full disclosure here. I'm sorry, I didn't get inside. So they put these up around the side, like, at the Oklahoma bombing, we put up these ugly barriers. Well, they put these spheres up to keep any vehicles from coming close to the building to blow it up. But at least it was artistic. I thought that was kind of cool. And there's a canal that goes through. It's a very pretty town. We could have spent a couple days there, but and then one thing I noticed here, this kind of amazed me. Look at the street lights. Every street we were on, they have all these lines going, and they put them right in the center. Right in the center of the street. I'll go back there. No lampposts I saw in Denmark. And that was our ship we got on board, and we started our journey. And here I was roaming the decks, and I saw this building that looked very unique, way off the it was probably about 5 miles away. But I got my telephoto lens on, I doubled it up, and I said, that's got to be something special there. So when I got home, I checked on it, and it's Kronborg Castle, also known as Elnor Castle in the Shakespearean play Hamlet. This is the one that he wrote the play, although it was fictitious, but that was what he had in mind for Hamlet. And I got a couple pictures here that I also took online so you could see what it looked like. So that's about it. So now we're on the high seas, and we're heading over to Norway, and you hope that you don't see that coming at you. Well, that's the Bismarck, okay? The German battleship, the Bismarck, and there's quite a story behind that. And this, since we're in between Denmark and Great Britain, this is part of the Great Britain story. Its size was it was a massive armament, and it was one of the speediest ships and strongest ships at its time. I was going to say, so the great German battleship, the Bismarck, was in action only a short while when it met the British Royal Navy. Its first encounter, the Bismarck sinks the mighty British battleship, the Hood, was the pride of the Royal Navy on May 24, 1941. The public in Great Britain were stunned and demoralized. Winston Churchill immediately stated, "We must find the Bismarck and sink her to the bottom of the sea." Making a run to France for repairs, the British torpedo bomber hits the Bismarck's rudder, was a lucky shot, disables the ship, and only could go in circles. And that's when the British Navy finds it, and since it was all in circles, it couldn't aim its guns at the British Navy, and they sink it. Now, I was 10 years old in 1960 when my dad took me to the Fox Theater, and I remember the marquee, "Sink the Bismarck." So we're on our way to Norway next here, and let me get to the flag, I guess, and then we'll give you the facts about Norway. Okay, Norway, and we have a representative here from Norway too, so if I miss anything, chime in here, please. The Nobel Peace Prize is awarded in Oslo every year. Norway is a constitutional monarchy with a royal family dating back to the 12th century. It has a very rich Viking history. The population is 5.6 million, and 64% are Lutheran. Norwegians are one of the highest consumption, oh, there we go, of coffee in the world, averaging almost 5 cups per day. The Winter Olympics in 1952 were in Oslo, and the 1994 were in Lillehammer. Remember that? Norway is about the same size as the state of New Mexico, which is our 5th largest state behind Alaska, Texas, California, and Montana. So we're going to say, how was World War II in Norway involved? Why Norway was so important to the Germans? Really, they take over Denmark to get to Norway. Norway was crucial to them. 43% of the German iron ore came from Sweden through the railroad in Norway. And they were producing a lot of armament, and they needed iron ore. Norway's many ice-free ports and naval base are not ice-free ports. They used for naval bases to control the North Atlantic shipping lanes. Remember, we're sending goods over to Great Britain and also to Russia, and they wanted to stop that. And the third thing was heavy water. You say, what's heavy water? Well, heavy water is, we normally look at water as H2O. It's D2O. It's deuterium oxide, which is an isotope of hydrogen. And that was critical to the Nazis and the Germans because they were just getting into the atomic bomb research. And that was very critical. And they had the only plant, hydroelectric plant, that was producing this commercially. And they were using it. They sent some to France for research. But they had no idea of the atomic bomb because they weren't in atomic bombs. They were kind of more in medical research. So the Germans wanted that plant for that heavy water. And there's a movie that I just watched the other night. I went back to look at it. I've seen it before. Was called the Heroes of, where is it? I got it written down here. Telemark. The Heroes of Telemark. And it's got Richard Harris in it. So if you get a chance to watch that movie, it's worthwhile. So Germany invades Norway on April 9th, 1940 to secure the strategic ports and the resources. Despite initial resistance, Norway was quickly overwhelmed by superior German forces. The government and the royal family fled to London. Resistance was very strong and not only sabotaged German operations, but supplied intelligence to the Allies. Norwegian commandos, and with Allied help, destroyed that heavy water production at the hydro plant in 1943. The movie The Heroes of Telemark with Kirk Douglas and Richard Harris depict that story. Norway remained in German occupation and control until the end of the war in 1945, so it was a full 5 years. But this helped. This may have helped the success of the Allies, because Hitler made two mistakes here. One, he kept his forces in Norway before D-Day, which a lot of his generals wanted to bring him down, and maybe our D-Day invasion may not have been successful. But even after D-Day, he kept his 400,000 troops there to the end of the war. And if he'd wound down to the European theater, it made it much more difficult for the U.S. troops. So that's the history as far as the war goes, and we'll see what Norway has to offer us here. So here's kind of coming into the port of Oslo. These little homes on these islands I thought were kind of unique. And these are, I guess, transport ships that go back and forth to carry cars. This lighthouse I thought was kind of cool on a rock. So we're coming into the port. This is what Oslo would look like. Currently, there's a lot of German ships that come in, cruise ships to that port now. This is their opera house. I'm on a bus taking these pictures, which I hate doing out the window. So we're just seeing as we're kind of coming through the town, the architecture. This is their presidential palace. And they have some other unique buildings. I never could figure out what this one was. I don't know if you know that in Oslo, but I thought the architecture was pretty cool on it. And so here we come to this. This is the site of the 1952 Olympics. Now they have a new ski jump here. It's much more massive than the one in 52. And you can see from the bottom. And then when you get to that point, you look the other way, and that's where you're landing. So, and this is looking down on Oslo from the ski resort there. Now this park here, very famous park called Fogner Park, also known as Vingeland Park. Let's go back to that. The artist, Gustav Vingegaard, renowned Norwegian sculptor from 1869 to 1943. Fogner Park is the world's largest sculpture park made by one single artist. His work started in 1924 until his death in 43. All his sculptures are in the nude to emphasize their timeliness and universality. The park contains over 200 nude human sculptures from birth to death. The main feature is the monolith with 121 carved human figures, you see that in the center, which started in 1927 when a block of granite weighing several hundred tons and 50 feet long, that was one piece of granite, they didn't make it in sections, was delivered from the quarry. It was erected a year later and covered by a huge wooden shed. Vingegaard's plaster model, which he did, erected it next to it for reference, and it took 3 masons 14 years to accomplish what was displayed on Christmas Eve 1944 to a crowd of 180,000. Now I looked up Oslo's population at that time was 250,000. Now, Christmas Eve 1944, they were still occupied by the Germans. So I think the Norwegians were very proud that this was accomplished, and that many people showed out, but they were still under occupation at that time. He also designed the Nobel Peace Prize. So we're just going to roll through these slides of the park here. Yeah. This guy playing his accordion there, I thought was cool. It was interesting to me for these sculptures, if he's got a plaster of Paris one, how they were transforming the images across. And then this one, there's one near the end here, which is this famous one called the Angry Boy. I think it's coming up. No, it's coming up after this one, I believe. No, maybe one more. There he is. That's called Angry Boy. This was an old German church. This was 1875, the Lutheran church. It was kind of interesting. They had a picture of the Last Supper there. It was weathered and everything. There's the inside there. This was very interesting. It took us to this little town. Now, these were original buildings built around the 1400s and stuff, 1500s. Whoop. And they brought them all this one location and made a street out of them, how it would look if you were walking at that time. And I just thought they were fascinating. Now, you notice they all have, also we'll get to this, turf roofs. And they had a lot of docents there were giving you the story. But you can see this is a turf roof. And the critical thing in there is the bark from the trees. That's what really keeps the water from seeping through. And they had this down to an art. And we're going to see this a little more of this when we get to Iceland. Now we're coming, I got up in the morning. It was, a little light. And I saw this picture outside my window on the ship. And I just thought that lighthouse was cool. And we're going into the fjord now in Norway here. And very beautiful as you fly down the colors. And so we get to the end, and we took the tender and the ship into the port, and trolls. Trolls are big in Norway. So here we are walking. This is a little town I told you about, and our guide's taking us through. And one of the things on this tour we were supposed to have was a lunch stop. And I thought, well, that's interesting. We passed a couple cafes in town, and we didn't stop. We kept walking and walking. Very pretty little town. Here's some trolls people have on there. I love the architecture. A lot of these will have black roofs, and more of the newer ones have black metal roofs because the winter and it heats up better and the snow melts off. This wasn't Frankenmuth, it was a small section like Frankenmuth. Because this was June. We're there in June now, okay? Just a quaint little town. And this was the town that was occupied by 1,000 Germans at a military school. This church here, I got some facts on this church. Oh, I know. It's okay. The inhabitants of this town go back 6,000 years. They have a burial mound behind this church in a close proximity, not because the church was there, from Viking burial ground. And this church was built, the first church, it's been rebuilt 6 times, was built in the 12th century, and this last was built in 1849. That's what it looks like inside the church. Now, we go through town, now we're walking up the fjord, and Donna was getting tired. We're going about a mile and a half, and we're wondering, where are we going here? Well, let me get to the... So he stops in front of this house. We're going to walk up a hill to get to the house, and that's his wife and him. They've been there 5 generations. This is his wife's family's there 5 generations, and they invite us into their home for the lunch, which I thought this was life. We had this experience one time before in the Falkland Islands. We went on this outing and went about 80 miles out in the barren land and went to this little farm that the couple was like 80, in their 80s, still run the farm with their son, and they brought us in, and the neighbors came in, they were baking us cookies and everything. Well, it was kind of the same thing here. So they took us into the house, and I just like the shot. I'm looking out their front window, and there's our cruise ship and they had neighbors in cooking some Swedish pancakes, but they give us this elaborate blueberry pie. And as we're eating, she takes this picture down, which I thought was kind of fascinating, off the wall. And they suddenly, well, this guy's still going on. She says, the wall is kind of spongy. And they cut it, and they found 9 layers of wallpaper over the 5 generations. And they can tell where they are, what So she wanted to go back to about the time of World War II, and she's having that wallpaper made special so she could put back on the walls that her parents were in the house. And I thought that was interesting. They just put that up, and this is her national dress. Now, in Norway, if I'm wrong on this, their National Day or Constitution Day is on May 17th. Am I correct with that? And the many dresses in the traditional, they call B-U-N-A-D, bond, a Norwegian folk costume. It is known for its intrinsic design, vibrant colors, and detailed embroidery, and is adorned with a traditional jewelry, often reflecting a special region of Norway. Now, as we're heading out of the fjord here, there's another ship. Germans only had really two German battleships. One was the Bismarck, and this is the sister ship, the Tirpitz. And it eluded the British Navy for like 4 years. It would go into these fjords and come out and attack our ships in the North Atlantic. But they finally find it one day in 1944, I believe. December 12th, 1944, they bombed her and sank her to the bottom of the fjord. And so we're leaving the fjord now, and you can see there's still some snow up in the mountains there. And there's waterfalls to look at. And then we're out in the open sea again. And then I like this because north of Iceland, we're going, you cross the Arctic Circle, and we've been blessed to have, you cross the Arctic Circle, and we've been below the Antarctic Circle and the Arctic Circle, and they give you a little certificate. Now we're coming to Iceland here, and this is what Iceland looks like, and I talked to somebody that they took the road around. My brother did that this last year or two, but we were cruising around Iceland, and then we're going to stop here on the flag, and we'll just give you some facts. I never knew this till I researched a little bit, and this kind of amazed me. Okay, why? I know, I can see it here. I don't know, I thought when I hit the space bar, it's supposed to stop it. Okay, Iceland is known as the land of fire and ice, for its many volcanoes and glaciers. Iceland uses 100% renewable electricity from its geothermal hydroelectric sources. Population is about 400,000. 65% of the population are members of the Evangelical Lutheran Church. Ethnic group is 81% Norwegian. The area is the size of the state of Ohio. Iceland has 30 smaller islands. Iceland gained sovereignty from Denmark in 1918, became fully independent on June 17, 1944. Iceland is one of the few places in the world where there are no mosquitoes. Northern Iceland averages a temperature in July and August of about 50 to 54 degrees, northern Iceland. We were there, it didn't even get about 32. It was the coldest coldest summer they had in northern Iceland since the 1940s. And they have turf homes here, and we're going to look at those. And 50% in 1900 of the population were still living in these turf homes. And they lived there until about 1966, the last one left. Now, World War II, so all Iceland, World War II, it was a strategic point if you could take it. So when World War II started, Iceland was a sovereign kingdom in union with Denmark. And after Germany invaded Denmark in April 1940, Iceland declared themselves neutral. However, the British, concerned about the German interest in Iceland, invaded Iceland. It was a friendly invasion. Okay, because they couldn't, defend off the British. Now, the interesting part that I learned, the British occupation was intended to prevent Germany from using Iceland as a strategic base in the North Atlantic. In July of 1941, now remember, we don't enter the war until D-Day here, which is after this. The defenses of Iceland were turned over to the United States, and even though the U.S. had yet entered the war, the U.S. had 30,000 troops stationed in Iceland. This was the equivalent to 25% of Iceland's population at the time, and not until 5 days, it was not until 5 days after Pearl Harbor that we declared war on Germany, December 11, 1941. So we had troops in Iceland for 5-6 months, and I never knew that. 30,000 troops, in fact. So this is my first view of Iceland. I got up that morning, and I looked out my window, and I said, holy smokes. This is July 15th here, or June 15th. And then you got to get used to the streets here. And this, I've got the little town we were in here even, but they had the church here, and we were just going on a little tour here. One of the interesting things, I think, is this picture right there. Whoop. Come on, let's go back to that. Come on. So, during COVID, and in wintertime, it's dark there, 20 hours of the day. People were so depressed, they put all their red stoplights, they changed to red hearts. I thought that was kind of, so you'd see it and just gave you a little boost, and just seeing that. And then they had this little park we went to, and it was interesting, you see all the green here, but then you look at the distance, you can see it, that's all snow. And then we got on this road here, and we're heading to these turf homes. Now remember, these are very practical because, first of all, they have a lot of lumber. You won't find much lumber in Iceland, and they're very well insulated. And I'm just going to show you. But they're kind of nice inside. Windows. Kind of like, and then sometimes you had to cut the grass if you lost the view out of the window. But in between the homes, though, going north and south, it wasn't as nice. You could see right here they had, just rough wooding, and so these were all connected. There was quite an area of them. And then they had these facades on the front, which were pretty cool on this side of the homes. And there's a church there. It was snowing pretty good, and that was kind of like that, actually. And then the little graveyard there, and I thought, hey. Now you can see here as we're driving out how windswept this is, and this is a farm there, and you don't see other farms around it. Kind of desolate in some ways. And this is the falls we're coming to. I'll just let this go by itself. Don't get time. Oh yeah. Yeah. And again, we stopped in this one little town. I think it was maybe, 100 people in this town. And they set up where I think he's the youth minister of this church. He's lived there all his life. And he was going to sing 3 songs in Icelandic to us. So he went to his church. Pulpit was pretty carved, ornate, I thought. Lutheran church. And this gentleman sang down and sang a song. There was maybe 15 of us listened to it. And outside the church, on the other side of the road, there's this memorial. They had a landslide here that killed like 22 people or something a few years back. So they built this memorial to them. And there's just some more waterfalls. But I was in this church, I looked out the window and I thought, this guy's been here his whole life. So how simple it is, and our lives are so hectic. So this is a place we stopped. It was in the town, so the biggest structure in the town. And they served us this bread here. Now this bread is special bread that if you're a woman, you bake this bread and give it to the person that you're interested in marrying. And if he likes the bread, you're going to marry him. And if he doesn't like the bread, you won't. Now, I don't know if I was in Iceland, I could still be a bachelor. I don't know. It looked a lot better than it tasted. Oh. And then they had a couple, this is the biggest mammal in Iceland, it's the Arctic wolf. And I got a couple of them here. They're shedding this time because it's supposedly summer. But, and this is the other one. Yeah. And again, now this was a picture, this is an island actually by that church. If you looked out the window of the church, you'd see this island. You wouldn't see the water because it's a little far away. But that's how, now what you're seeing here, these things are your salmon farms. They're sort of out in the ocean and they put these nets down, that's where they raise the salmon. Just another stop here. Now we're heading around Iceland. We get to Reykjavik, which is the capital. The sun come out for the first time. I said, wow. And we're further south now, so you're seeing more green. This is the church that's there. I didn't go inside, but I did get a picture of the inside. Just as stark as is on the outside is what the inside looks like. But it's pretty in a way. But we're going inland here now. We're going about 100 miles into almost the center of Iceland to a national park there. But this was just some of the, I'm shooting out the window, which I hate to do, but I'm just taking some pictures as we're going. Another little church, I'm thinking, well, there's nobody here. How do they even get into this church? But now we get to this national park. And this is our guide. His brother, I don't know if you guys have watched the Strongest Man in the World competition. Sometimes it's in Malta, sometimes it's in Italy. An Icelander was won in 4 years, and that was his brother, and he passed away a couple of years ago. But he was a cool guide. So we're in this national park, and one of the unique things about this national park is this right here. The Eurasian plate is Europe. The North American plate is this way, and it cuts right through that Mid-Atlantic ridge, and it is separating an inch a year. So at some point in time, it might just split into two islands, and so this part of Iceland's basically in North America, and that part of Iceland's technically in Europe. And we'll show you the geography of the land here. You can see this here, not in this photo, but you'll see it in the next one. This gap here is part of it. In fact, they used to hold the parliament meetings in the 1700s outside here because there was no wind in that gap. And you could walk down in there, which we are doing. Well, that was just a lake shot. In fact, some of the people on our ship took another expedition here, a tour, where they were snorkeling and they could see the fault line underneath the lake. I like this guy. If there was an Icelander, this is he's putting up the flag for the day, and with his beard and everything, it was pretty cool. Boy, this guy's really sensitive to me here. So here you can kind of see like the fault line there, but the whole valley is dividing as its fault line gets bigger, and there it is right there. So you're in Europe on one side and North America on the other. Yeah, it's hard to figure out how they use their language there. I'm going to kind of run through these. But I love nature, and there's always just plenty of nature shots to shoot here. Now we're kind of coming back, and I'm still in the bus shooting out the window. We had a weather gal here back in the 70s, and she'd call this a sucker hole. You get underneath one of those, you think the sun's going to come out, and then and it never does. So I just thought that was nice. And most of these are volcanoes you're seeing. Plenty of volcanoes that are not active. There are some that are, but they're just dormant. And this is another waterfall. Had a kind of a V shape to it when you get over here. It's kind of interesting. And we're on the road again. I'm just shooting out the window. Now we get to one of their thermal areas, and everybody's got their phones out to shoot. This little geyser goes off, and I get there, and it goes off, and by the time I got my camera out, it's done. It takes about 4 seconds maybe. It's there, and it's gone. Not like Old Faithful. And so I said, well, You know, I set my thing on. I was ready for it. Most people, by the time they got their phone up, the thing was already gone. So it went off every like 15 minutes. So that was pretty good. And then here's another thermal area, and I'm going, you know, the United States, we got all these people beat. You know, as far as thermal areas go, you see some in New Zealand. There's a thermal area. That's in Yellowstone National Park, Prismic Spring. Morning Glory. There's, you know, so every time I'm overseas or something, we have a beautiful country. You know, with our national park system, we don't hold a candle to, no one really holds a candle to us, let's put it that way. Now here's more of the thermal area in Iceland. It looks like this. And I thought this is their plant here, and I thought this was fascinating. They go down and bring up water over 300 degrees under pressure, so it'd be, you know, it wouldn't be boiling. And they use all this, they're like 50 miles or 40 miles out of Reykjavik, but every home in Reykjavik is heated by hot water from this plant. They pipe the hot water in all the homes and heat them. You know, but they have the thermal areas there to do it. We do have some in the United States that we could use. But it was and here's where they're exiting all the steam that's coming up. They have to have a vent for it. And it was like a freight train going by, just roared. Now, this is one of the more, we're in the southern part of the island now, and it's sunny, and it's maybe 60 degrees. And we had to tender into this port here. And this was a little town. In fact, this island doubled its size in 1952 or something. They had a volcanic eruption, and the island got twice as big, but there's nothing on that side of the island because it's all volcanic rock. So Puffin Donna liked. And even this little artwork I thought was kind of cool in this building here as you look at the gal there. So this was Sunday morning. Some of the shops are closed, so we just decided, oh, there's a little Icelandic girl. I tell a photo from quite a distance. They're mainly Scandinavian. In fact, it's interesting, someone mentioned there's only 400,000 people in Iceland. They have to, when they want to get married, they have to go and try to be at least 3 cousins apart because they can have a lot of intermarriage because it's all pretty much from the same, you know, people that came there. There's a lady just selling her sweater she made outside her home. Don and I were walking. Everything's uphill when you land anywhere at sea level. So we're walking up into this town, and this person had on their post over probably in the wintertime, you know, cheers people up a little bit. And then I took a walk. I saw Don and went back to the ship, and here's the roof of the town, and I'm kind of going up into this area and with my camera, which I love to do. This little house was the historic museum of the island, and I'm kind of going up. And then you see this shot here. And you look at the snow behind it and the glacier, and then this little island here. It's interesting, a little house in the middle there, you know, and I says, well, that's interesting. In fact, Donna just saw something on this island, and it's actually, we found out it's a hunting lodge. It hasn't been used since the 1970s, but people go out to the island, you're on a boat and you have to wait. There's a rope to get up. There's no staircase to get to a certain point, and then if you don't catch it right, you end up in the water. And I tell a photo, and that's the best closest I could get to it. But you're isolated out there. And then these gals were in front of me, and I was just walking with my camera, and some just, you know, that's looking across the thing again. There's mountains and glaciers. Now, we got in the ship. We went to our last stop. It was a beautiful day. I was all excited that morning, and I look out, and we're not going anywhere. You know, they said, well, we're waiting to see if the sea settled down because we had to tender in. It was almost a mile to tender in to the port. And I'm going, it looks fine to me. And then there's a Viking ship ahead of us, and we're waiting. And I saw their dinghies, not their dinghies, but they use their lifeboats to tender in. And I said, oh, these people are going, and we're going. I was really going to be mad. But they brought theirs in, and they left, and then we left. We couldn't get in. This is the Valley of the Waterfalls, which these pictures I'm going to show you now, when someone said there's beautiful waterfalls, there are. And these were taken, you know, on a nice day. So this is in the Valley of the Waterfalls in Iceland, and I'll run through them here for you. They're very beautiful. Good photographer here, too. He slows down his shutter speed to kind of get the flow. So if you get to Iceland, get here. And that's the last one. Oh, that's the last one. So here now, we're coming into Scotland. Orkney is an island in northern Scotland. And here's some facts on Scotland. Population's 5.5 million, comparable to South Carolina. Religion, mainly the Church of Scotland, Presbyterian. Independence in 1603 and in 1707 formed a new United Kingdom with England. Home of golf. Invention of radar by Robert Watson Watts basically saved Great Britain in World War II. This was extremely important. In fact, the Germans didn't even recognize we had it. They thought they saw these signals as part of Great Britain's electrical grid. They sent blimps over and never really knew that they had radar until it was too late. And when radar saved Great Britain, they didn't have a lot of planes. And their coastline's 700 miles. And when the Luftwaffe was going to come to bomb them, they couldn't keep planes up in the air all the time. So with radar, they could have a 30-minute warning. And that's how they defeated in the Battle of Britain in the air of Germany, because they had a heads up, could get their planes targeted, and it took, by the time Germans figured it out, it was too late for them. But he was an inventor of radar. He was Scottish. The national animal is the unicorn. Now, when I heard that, it says, the unicorn, give me a break. But their logic was because they are proud and untamable creatures. They are fiercely independent and famously difficult to capture or conquer. That made sense. You'll see on one slide here, North Sea oil production accounts for 12% of Scotland's economy. John Bard demonstrated the world's first live television working system on January 26, 1926, is when television was first done. Now, really the person where the thought process got for television was an American, Philo Tyler Farnsworth, a farm boy from Idaho at the age of 14. In 1920, conceptualized this idea, showed his science teacher. Science teacher, that's pretty cool. And he went on to build some televisions. And then he was a good guy, and he told Zenith when they were doing some televisions, come on in, I'll show you what I'm doing. And Zenith did that. He didn't have a patent. They mass-produced televisions, and he had a lawsuit in the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court went back to that conception he had that the science teacher kept, and he actually won the lawsuit and got some money. So interesting story. And the reason he saw it was he was a farm boy, and he saw the rows in his fields. And when you're on TV, it scans back and forth. There's all lines in your TV, and that was his concept for transmitting those signals. So in Scotland, here's the deal with World War. Well, this goes back to World War I. Area is called Scapa Flow. It's like a big bay area in northern Scotland. Great Britain defeats Germany in World War I and captures a whole German fleet, 74 ships, and inters them in Scapa Flow. They took care of their armament, but they kept the Germans prisoners on the ship. The German rear admiral, waiting for the Treaty of Versailles to be finalized, feared the worst and ordered the scuttling of all 74 British ships when the British fleet left for exercises. In other words, they sunk their own ships. But they were working on this for a long time by opening up and welding doors open. They had some explosives they could use. And when they heard that the Versailles Treaty didn't go well for Germany, obviously in World War I, France and Britain took it to them for reparations, and that's really what kind of led to World War II. But the scuttling of those ships, I think I may even have here's Scapa Flow. It's a big circle. It's up in northern Scotland. And these are the armaments around Scapa Flow. And then here's the scuttling of the ships. And this is what Scapa Flow looks like. And then you can see they scuttled their ships. Now, the British raised a lot of them, but So now we're just in the same area as Scapa Flow here. In fact, this was the Italian chapel. And during World War I, I'll read this for you. I'll show you the picture of the chapel. 550 Italian prisoners of war were captured in North Africa. We were in North Africa, Patton, in World War II. They were brought to Orkney, Scotland in 1942. They worked on the Churchill barriers to protect Scapa Flow. You had 3 entrances to Scapa Flow, and they only wanted one, so these are the guys who built the concrete barriers to prevent ships coming in from the other areas. At Camp 60, the new commandant and father, Gucciabacci or something like that is in Italian, the camp's Catholic priest agreed that a place of worship was necessary. They joined Nisen's huts, which are our equivalent to our Kwanzaa huts. They used concrete left over from the construction of the barriers and spare plasterboard, and painting was done by a prisoner named D'Amico Cuccielli. He came back in the 1960s. He's one that will do the artwork I'll show you, to assist in some restoration. The chapel is still in use today for worship services and receives 100,000 visitors a year. And this is what it looked like inside. And it shows how we, the Brits, treated their prisoners of war. You know, they let them build this because it was all Scotland, it was Presbyterian. They were Catholic, so they could have their place of worship. And I think we have a lunch and learn to hear about the German prisoners of war in Michigan and how their stories. Yeah, it was beautiful. And here's the original photograph of the, I don't know who those 2 gentlemen are. Maybe one's the commandant, maybe one's the artist. But so we go into town here, there, and got the little sightseeing. Just some pictures of a Scottish town. I always like how all their chimneys go up, and then, so you get to share the streets with the traffic. So, and we're on the countryside here, driving along, and Donna looks petrified here. She goes, "Oh my gosh, we're on the wrong side of the road and it's raining. We're going to die." So no, just take it easy, Donna. We're okay. So here we come to, we're getting near the end here. This is St. Magnus Cathedral. It was founded in 1137 by Earl Ronvod as the final resting place for the relics of St. Magnus. Construction lasted 300 years to get this completed. Now this was built Catholic, okay, but there was a Reformation, as we all know. And so during the Reformation, many cathedrals suffered, but St. Magnus came through unscathed. It's a fine example of Romanesque architecture. Now it is the parish church of the Church of Scotland. And then St. Magnus, I wonder, who is this guy? He was martyred in 1117 for refusing to engage in violence, which set him apart from other leaders of his time. That's when they were getting attacked by the Vikings and everything at this point in time. So we'll finish up here. Not too much. Some pictures of the inside is, there were some renovations done, I think, in 1950 on it. But for the most part, the original structure is in place. Kind of remind me a little bit of the art windows in The Sound of Music when they were doing their, yeah, stained glass. Now, we're strolling through, this is Kirkwall, Scotland. We're strolling through the town here. And I'm just taking some pictures. It was raining. Well, it was a perfect day to be in Scotland like it was here. Cold, rainy. Donna's got her umbrella. I went into the Highland Park distillery here to see if I could pick up a bottle of scotch. But when I looked at 4,635 pounds, that was $5,000. I wouldn't have been alive if I came out with that bottle of scotch. But I did go in here because I love Scottish mints. In fact, I always go over to Windsor to come back to the duty-free shop to get my Scottish mints. So I went here, I'm in Scotland, candy shop, Scottish mints. I said, "I like some Scottish mints." They didn't know what the heck I was talking about. There they are called imperial mints. But I did get them. Here's Donna. They still got the telly boots. And here's your, they bring North Sea oil in here and refine it here in Scotland. And then we come to our last stop here, Invergordon. And we get on a tour bus and just some pictures of the countryside, very pretty. Cutting through these towns, love these little towns, Canadian flag there. Architecture, just to me, is just interesting. Very nice, quaint, little shops. And there's our guide, and he says, okay, we're going to go to Loch Ness. This was the restroom you had to pay to get in there. You could even scan. So we're coming up to the Loch Ness. I'm on the bus here. And the only place we could get a picture, he stops, is the side of the road. And I had to hold on to branches, and I got this shot here. And then I looked out there, and he said, little dot. And I go, no, can't be. Don't worry about it. So now we're going up to the Scottish Highlands. Let's give this one picture. And very pretty. Now that mountains over there is the Isle of Skye, one of my favorite Talisker Scotch. It's from a distillery over there. But we stopped to come to see this castle. Beautiful castle. It was actually renovated in the 50s to restore it back to its originality. And I was hoping that gate didn't come down as we were going underneath it. And these are some of the photos of the inside. And then I think we're out of there. I just took some pictures on the outside.
Is that Skye or is that Orkney?
This is Orkney, right? Skye Island was, was a break there. I would like to get out over there. And then we got we get piped out. And then we're just traveling back to the ship again for nice homes, It's pretty. And this was a haggis maker, the finest haggis maker in Scotland. And then, that was good. And then we get piped out onto our ship, and then, on the way home, I say, we're flying over Toronto. So I took my telephoto, got a picture of the skyline of Toronto. And then we get to Detroit, and this was the day that Gordie Howe Bridge was connected. That's what you're looking down on there. And the freighter going underneath. And that's it. I think we got done right on time.